Hi, and welcome to Diatonic Dissection, a series where we'll delve into various pieces of video game music to show you how they work and how to play them. I want these videos to be for non-musicians as well as musicians, so I'll explain some of the musical concepts along the way. As always, in deference to the almighty algorithm and its ever-watching eye, please like, share, subscribe, etc. Any questions, suggestions, abuse, declarations of love, anything of that ilk, please leave it down below in the comments or feel free to contact me on any of my social medias which are in the description. Along with those in the description, you will find a link to a Google Drive where you can download tabs and sheet music in various formats. I'd recommend you do this so you can follow along and see what's going on for yourselves. Today, we'll be looking at Darren Korb's Rage of the Myrmidons from 2019's Hades, made by Supergiant Games. This track is very fun and is quite the minefield of weird time signatures including 13/8, 11/8 and 7/4. When we get to those, I'll explain for the non-musicians. The important overarching details for this track are that the key is F minor, so 4 flat B, E, A and D, and the tempo is 145 beats per minute, and the instruments used for this version are 3 acoustic guitars, 2 electric guitars, 1 electric bass, 1 synthesizer and drums. All guitars used are tuned to 7-string drop A, so standard E tuning with an extra A at the bottom, and the bass is tuned to drop A, so you will need a 5-string bass or some very heavy strings. Obviously, feel free to transpose if you need to. The equipment used is listed below in the description, but if you don't feel like reading it, it is as follows. Acoustic guitar parts were performed using a Blackat Leon 8 using the piezo pickup. The electric guitar parts are performed using a Kiesel AM8 multi-string 8. The bass is performed using a Dingwall NG3 6-string. The synth is a Korg Kross, and the drums are provided by EZDrummer 2 from Toontrack. And the tones come from my Neural DSP quad Cortex, and this was all recorded, including the narration, using Reaper. The track is split up into sections that are labelled by letter on the sheet music. For each section, we'll start with the full arrangement and then dive into the minutiae of the individual instruments. With all that sorted, let's begin with section A. Talking about the guitar parts. For bars 1 to 9, we have 2 guitars playing. One is just playing a C power chord in 8th notes, so it's just the C and the G, and the other is playing a melody. Before we get into what the guitars are playing for the rest of section A, a quick crash course on time signatures. Most music you hear is in a time signature called 4/4, and that refers to the time being counted as 4 quarter notes. It could be written as 8/8 or 16/16, as 8th and 16th notes are valid subdivisions, but the same rule goes for time signatures as does for fractions, which means that it has to be written in its lowest form. The latter part of section A features the time signatures 13/8 and 11/8, which are essentially 6.54 and 5.54. The extra 8th note gives these time signatures a slightly jerky feeling. The other important aspect of these bars is how they are divided internally. The riff starts with a group of 7 notes, denoted by the 3 downbeats, and is then followed by 6 notes for 13/8 or 4 notes for 11/8. Good examples of this 7 rhythm can be found in Natural Sciences by Rush and Days Turn Blue to Grey by Machine Head. Getting back to the guitars, they're playing an octave apart, and they're playing a part that is made up of the notes F, A flat, C, G and B flat, making it either an F minor 13 omit 7 arpeggio or an F minor and G minor arpeggio, except it's missing the D from the G minor. Every 2 bars the bass note goes up a semitone and then drops down again for the next 2 bars. Bars 13 to 21, there is a 3rd guitar that is providing a rhythmic emphasis. This emphasis divides the bars up into their sub-bars, but the clever bit will take a little bit of explanation. The emphasis is being provided by the guitar as well as the bass initially, and the pattern switches depending upon the bass note of the arpeggio. The first time round, when the bass note is C, the emphasis falls on the first 2 beats of the 7 group and the first beat of the last group. However, when the first note moves up a semitone to D flat, the pattern is mirrored with the first beat of the 7 grouping and the first 2 beats of the final group. These rhythms are much easier to see once we get to section B. Now let's talk about the bass for section A. The first bar of the bass part is just a dotted whole note on C, as we're in 6/4, and a dot adds half the value of the note it follows. And there is an octave slide back down to C for bar 3. However, when we reach bar 5, the bass begins playing jumping octaves and is following the melody played by the acoustic guitar. In bars In bars 10 to 17, the bass is playing the downbeat of each bar and then is following the rhythm played by guitar 3, providing this rhythmic emphasis. For the first 4 bars of section A, the synthesizer is just playing the note C, but in different octaves. However, when it reaches bars 5 to 9, it is playing a melody of its own, but the rhythm is following the changing notes in the melodic guitar part. For bars 14 to 21, the synth joins the guitars and bass for the prog pattern for the last 2 times. Now let's move on to section B. Before we get into the specifics, be aware that there are more weird time signatures this time, consisting of 7/4 and 6/4. For section B, the guitar is playing something similar to the beginning of section A before it goes all prog, and this repeats for the duration of the alternating bars of 7 and 6. For the final 4 bars, the guitar is playing an ascending sequence of power chords and ends on an E octave. For section B, the drums actually get to play a groove of sorts, and the rhythm follows the guitar part in places for more rhythmic emphasis. The bass part for section B follows the main beats of the drum part, but also features some more embellishments like octave jumps and slides like we've seen before. The synthesizer part for section B is similar to that seen in section A, as it plays long notes that follow the focal points of the rhythm. Sections C and D are repeats of A and B, so there isn't much to delve into detail-wise, so here are the 4 instruments together. In section E, the guitar is doing some interesting stuff using extended and suspended chords. Some of these chords include sevenths, but they are missing their third note, which is a bit odd as the third tone is one of the defining features of the sound of a chord. The bass part for section E consists of arpeggios of the chords from the guitar part. However, in the bass part these are inverted arpeggios, so they cover a much larger sonic range. The synthesizer in section E is playing a melody that's based around a clave rhythm which we see in Afro-Cuban or Latin music. However, it is seen very commonly in popular music. Delicate by Taylor Swift is a good example of it. Here is an example of the rhythm on drums. Usually in popular music you'll hear it played very quickly, but in this track it's very slow. The drums aren't doing an awful lot in this section apart from providing a bass drum hit at the start of each bar, so I've included the synthesizer and the drums in the same clip. Section F is pretty much a return to section A, except the guitar is just staying on the C power chord until the end when it goes into a D flat diminished chord. The drums and the bass aren't doing a massive amount here, and so all instruments were put together in the clip for section F. Sections G and H are pretty much the same as sections A and B, with one very slight difference during the prog riff. At the end of each cycle there is a 16th note flourish, and for this flourish there is also a new instrument that only appears in this section and its repeat, which is a flute synth. It comes in with the first flourish and then plays in unison with the guitar and bass for the rest of the section. Sections I through N are the same as sections A, B and D, but instead of acoustic guitars and some drums, there is now a fully fledged drum part and distorted electric guitars. Obviously we have already covered most of what's going on in these sections, so all the clips are here put together. delve into the drums and what they're doing in these sections, as it's the first time they've had anything to do. In section I, the drums are following the rhythm of the guitar, but have some fills and embellishments. Sadly, the fun is very short-lived when we get into section J, as it's back to just playing the first note of each subdivision. However, it does return to a groove similar to that seen in sections D and H, and this groove neatly carries us on into section K. Sections L through N, everything is pretty much just a repeat of I through K, so those were included with the initial video. Section O sees the return of section E, but, as we established before, this time with distortion and more drums. The synth and the bass part are pretty much the same as they were in section E, but the guitar part is now playing arpeggios instead of chords. Section P, the guitar and the bass aren't doing an awful lot, but the drums actually get to play some fills, and here is my dissection of the fills as heard on the track. Section Q sees the final return of the prog 13/8 11/8 riff that we have seen in previous sections. This time around, it includes the 16th note flourish that we saw in section G, as well as the use of the synth flute sound. Drums actually get to do something again in this section, playing a groove as well as copying the 16th note flourishes. The groove leads very neatly into the final section of this track, section R, as it just continues onwards. We see the end of the track with section R, and it is a repeat of section N with that same heavy riff with the synth floating over the top. However, after 2 repeats, the drums change to playing on the beat to give a really driving rhythm to finish off the track. And the track is finished with the slow triplet and a quick tom roll to finish. We have looked at all 9-ish minutes of Rage of the Myrmidons from Hades, composed by Darren Korb, in far too much detail, breaking down drum parts, chords, and other musical ideas seen throughout. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, ring the bell, etc., as I said at the beginning. Any suggestions, questions, requests, abuse, please leave them down below in the comment section, or feel free to track me down on social media. Hopefully, we'll see you next time. Bye!